Welcome everyone to episode 5 of Hackathon Heroes. Hackathon Heroes is a show that I've made up, but we interview people who've had success at Web3 Hackathons, however you define success. But if you define this success as being an ETH Global finalist, I think I have the best person to talk about that. Welcome to Hackathon Heroes, Steph, or Ocean444 on socials. Welcome to Hackathon Heroes. How are things?
Thank you. Things are great. As you know, I love Web3 hackathons. I got into this space through hackathons. Hackathons got me my first job, and it's also been cool to win some prizes.
Awesome. Well, you already beat me because I only have one cookie. I only have one cookie cutter question. I'm just gonna ask all the time, and it's why hackathons? Like, I always like to know what people's whys are on getting into hackathons or going to hackathons. Obviously, you said some benefits that you already got from hackathons, but like, why did you start? I guess, why you keep coming back?
Yeah. Well, the reason I started my first Web3 hackathon was because I had COVID.
Shout out to COVID.
It was during the pandemic, and I was sick. Shout out to COVID, I guess. But back then I was working at Amazon, and if we got COVID, we got 2 weeks off no matter what. And so in my second week, even in my first week, I was so blessed not to have a bad case. And so I was brain foggy, but I wanted to be doing or building something because there was nothing else to do. And so I think I saw ETH Online on Twitter, and I clicked around and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll build something for this hackathon. And I didn't know anything about hackathons, so I didn't actually submit to any of the prizes. Like, I didn't use any sponsored technologies. I just created like a Web3 project, and that ended up being a finalist for that hackathon, and that kind of gave me the bug. I was just super excited about having this whole community of people see what I had built, and people were hitting me up on Twitter like, oh, you got to keep building, come to this event. Do this next. And so that kind of gave me this pathway into Web3, and I didn't even mean to kind of be doing it more than just that event.
Wow. I mean, so I started the show saying, we're trying to find out ways to be successful at hackathons. I wouldn't recommend people getting contracting viruses or getting sick, but you won an ETH Global with the brain fog. So that's very impressive for sure. Well,
yeah. I don't talk a lot about that project because I remember I had never demoed something in that way before. I'm sure you know, as a software developer, you're not really demoing things that you're building on a large scale a lot of the time. And so that was like a very cool skill that I got out of hackathons that I never would have got in my day job at the time. But I remember when they live streamed the finale, at the end, Kartik said something to me, and I stumbled on my words, and I said, I did such a great job building at this event. And I meant to say, I had such a great time building, and I was so embarrassed. I was just like,
okay.
Oh my God, I'm ruined.
So I'm definitely going to find that clip, just FYI.
Oh God.
Because we got to see it.
Good luck.
We got to see the origin story. Gotcha. So working at Amazon, hackathons, things like that. Before, I guess, when you are getting brand new to the technology, and like you said, you didn't even use some of the sponsored technologies, but one of the things that I think some people struggle with or like want to learn about more is like how people scope their projects out. You have an online hackathon, so I think ETH Online is a bit longer, right, than all the other, like the weekend hackathons.
Yeah, that one is a 30-ish day hackathon, which is a totally different game than some of the weekend ones.
But yeah, I guess in general, then, I mean, especially then when you have like a whole playground of new tools, like how did you find direction on first, like what to build, right? And then also how to build it without, going crazy or you're going over time.
Yeah, I think that one's a bad example just because I had no idea what I was doing. So I did things completely wrong. Like, now that I've done a few, I'll tell you what I do now. So the first thing I do is figure out kind of what I want to build. So another somewhat recent one that I built was WalletOTP, which is like a one-time password generator. So it's similar to Authy or any of those authentication apps, except for the storage is decentralized and there's privacy preserving aspects. Nice. So for that one, I had the idea before I had any of the technology. And so from my idea, I started to come up with like, okay, what type of architecture do I want? And since I come from a very Web 2 background, I think in Web 2 terms more than I think in Web 3 terms. And then I kind of try to map those two Web 3 things. So I remember I was in the ETH Global Discord saying like, hey, is anyone basically like AWS Lambda, but Web 3?
Okay.
Is anyone doing storage Web 3 style? I just would ask questions like that. And that's kind of how I found those different building blocks to figure out what I needed for my hack.
Got it. I mean, that's interesting because there's like a part of the community I think that appreciates that type of marketing, right? Like, oh, we're the Web 3 of a, like I heard it.
Well,
the
everyone
AWS,
says they're the AWS
Web 3,
of Web3.
right? Which is like catchy in a way.
Yeah.
And I get where they're coming from with it, but also not very effective, especially coming from a Web 2 background, right? It's like, what part of AWS are you then? I mean, it's not this one single thing.
Well, that's where it's like, okay, well, show me functionally how you're doing the decentralized compute or whatever piece I need for my hack. And that's when there's sometimes like, oh, actually, we don't have that yet, but we are the AWS of Web3.
Yeah. But we'll see where the marketing goes with that. But yeah, I guess it's helpful if there's someone like you that's like looking for that specific question and you just search for it and then, hey, we're the Web3 storage solution or whatever. I'm interested then also when you talked about like the architecture, which I think maybe even people starting out, this could be tricky. And I'm going to go ahead and even say for people even experienced sometimes because as you probably know, right, when you want to, like, especially when we're like, oh, we're going to integrate this and this protocol and this protocol, and things are supposed to be interoperable. We're not there yet completely, but how do you, like, prevent yourself from getting into these pitfalls where you say, maybe I want to use this tool, and then you find out later on it doesn't support X, Y, and Z that you actually want to build with?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And it kind of depends on your time frame. Like in 30 days, you can kind of build around almost anything, I think. Like you can add Web 2 solutions in places that the Web 3 ones aren't working. But if it's one of these 3-day hackathons, honestly, when things don't work, what I do is I try to do whatever implementation they say works and then kind of connect the pieces in a bit of a hacky, hard-coded way if I have to, so that I show that I've used the technology, but I say kind of what went wrong. I think even in my WalletOTP hackathon project, I was having issues with Wallet Connect because at the time they were mid-migration to, I don't know if it was V2 or V3 at that time, but certain things weren't working. And so I used it to the best of its ability and then just called out in my documentation, like the README, what parts didn't work and kind of how I filled in those gaps. And so you can still use things even if they're not working perfectly and explain away any of the clunkiness. Because it is a hackathon. It's not expected to be absolutely perfect. Obviously, like the more kind of polished things are, the better your chances will be. But if things aren't perfect, that's expected.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Being very honest with what's working. Like, do you ever find yourself like, I think maybe even me personally has a tendency then just like to scrap that not the whole idea maybe or the project, but okay, I'm not going to use that. I'll just go pull like, especially when we're talking about like working with sponsored technologies versus non-sponsored technologies.
Yeah.
You ever find yourself just like, oh, I'm just going to use the sponsored technology no matter what because it's there? Or do you say, oh, you know what, this is not going to work, but it's going to work at completing my project, so I'm going to use a non-sponsored technology? Like, how do you find the balance between them?
Yeah, I definitely pull in non-sponsored technology all the time, especially if it's something that I've used before or I'm confident that the non-sponsored technology works. Like, I think I'll give a sponsored technology 3 tries, and on the second try, I'll go talk to someone from the sponsor, and I'll just be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Why isn't it working? Like, prove to me that my code is failing and it's not like the docs or the example or the project. Like if I don't see proof of life in something else, I have to kind of abandon it because it's like the chances of me getting this to work in the timeline that we have is just not something where I want to play my odds there. So yeah, it's kind of a time game. So on the 3rd try, if something's not working, I definitely just rip it out and go with something else.
All right, that you heard it here first, Web3 protocols. You get 3 tries to win Steph's heart, and then it's rip out. I like that. I like that policy.
Yeah. Is that like The Bachelor or something?
Yeah. Don't give me ideas on shows. Please don't. I have too many ideas on shows, and that could be one.
Okay, I thought of an idea for you today.
All right.
Do you know? I mean, obviously your profile picture is RuPaul.
It is
right?
obviously RuPaul, but some people it's
So
not
do you
obvious
watch Drag
to it.
Race?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so are you watching All Stars 9?
Not right now, no. But what's
you should
the
be.
suggestion?
Well, they did Snatch Game of Love
Okay.
as episode 3. I just watched it. That's where like people are behind a curtain and they give answers to like someone who's dating them.
Oh, right.
And so I was thinking with all the ZK wars, I would love to see someone from each of the ZK protocols do a dating game and Vitalik is behind the curtain deciding who's the most aligned without them saying what their protocol is, just like
Talking about
And I
what
feel
it
like you
is.
could host
Oh,
that.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, God, look, I got a name like A Line for Love or something like that.
Oh yeah. Something like
Something
that.
like this. Oh, okay.
I love your content.
Yeah. Here we go. But back to the Hackathon Heroes.
Yeah.
So you also talk about polish. So a spoiler alert or non-spoiler alert, but episode 4 was actually with Anna, who's a designer, and so I was really focused on
Oh, cool.
her as a designer going to hackathons, like how do devs design, and vice versa, on like when do you make a good design or when do you stop at the design point? Because as you mentioned, it's a hackathon. It doesn't need to be perfectly, but like for you from a polish perspective. A lot of people think, that's important because especially the pitch and the presentation, like if you have a really nice looking site, even if to your point doesn't work all the way, that's gonna push you ahead. So do you like how much focus do you have on polish itself?
Yeah, so polish is not my first thought as a developer, but I know that especially in a time crunch, it needs to be somewhat good immediately. So I usually just use a library like Chakra UI
Okay.
or Tailwind or a combination of both so that I have components that are pretty plus styling that's already there that I can just tinker with at the end. And then where I spend more time on polish is the actual like images that go into either my README or my showcase page, making sure those are like the perfect dimensions for what's needed, because I think people might spend more time on looking at those just to understand the project and whatever you video for the demo, more time there than actually clicking through themselves. So that's kind of where I spend my polish time if I'm time limited. And then if I'm not, I'll spend way more time coming up with like a cool color palette and a design.
Yeah.
I'm
Mascot.
not
I
great
heard
at
you got to
that,
get a mascot.
honestly.
Mascots will set you apart.
mascot?
Yeah, you got to get a mascot for every
Okay.
hackathon project.
One thing that makes me think of is Kat and Kevin's like ghost mascot. I don't remember what their project was, but I saw it on Twitter and it was some type of like ghost project on Lens, I believe.
Okay.
And the design for that was awesome, and I'm pretty sure they were a finalist.
There you go. One example, and that's all you. That's all you need to prove your point. No, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's got you talking still about the project. So even if they weren't a finalist per se, it sticks to your memory. And I think, I hear people give advice in different areas, right? Like, the README is the most important, or the video is the most important, or just do the presentation. Because but no one. Ironically, which is might be a bad thing, no one ever says like, "Oh, the code is the most important." Like, that's like make sure the code is looking great and perfect, because obviously that's not the goal of the hackathon, I guess. But yeah, it's funny. But
I mean, it does come into things.
Yeah.
And I think certain developers are really specific about wanting the code to be beautiful. I know you were at ETH London and you saw Dan and I hacking together, and he was like, "We got to use TypeScript," and he's such a clean code guy that he would see some of the code I was pushing up, and it was just like, I think this works, just get something up there because we're gonna run out of time.
Right.
And so that's something that I come back and clean up after the fact, and I'm willing to push ugly code, but he's not. So it depends on the developer. And honestly, like clean code, if you are collaborating on it over a weekend, it's so much easier to collaborate if it's somewhat clean, because you can just like follow the patterns that are there. But if you're working on totally separate components and you're time pressed, I'm fine with ugly code.
There you go. There you have it.
Ugly functional code.
Very clear. Yeah, makes sense. Good point though about collaboration. my first hackathon, Global Hackathon, I hacked alone. So I asked the Twitterverse for tips, and you actually gave me some great advice. But I guess maybe I would love for you to share, if you remember what you said at that time, but advice on hacking alone. I know you do that sometimes as well. What are effective techniques to stay sane and also be successful?
Yeah, great question. I've actually never hacked alone at a 3-day event, like the super quick ones. I don't think I could handle it just because there's so much work that goes into a project. But was the question about how to collaborate? Or
how to hack alone? How to not collaborate? How to be yourself? Be by yourself.
How to not collaborate.
Yeah. Or collaborate with yourself.
Yeah. So if you're hacking alone, you have to be really comfortable with getting blocked and kind of finding teammates that aren't your teammates, like sponsors or whoever that will help you. Like, don't be afraid to raise your hand. I think that's my top tip, because I know I get in my head and I'm like, nothing's working and no one can help, but someone can help and someone will help. The other thing is to go into the hackathon with a really clear idea of what you're going to build. Even if you don't know like a second before the hackathon, that's fine. Spend the first hour like really nailing down what you want to build and the different pieces you'll need. I'm a big checklist person, so once I have an idea and I have the checklist of features that I need, and also technologies I'm trying to plug in, whether they're sponsored or not, I can at least see progress as I'm building, and I know kind of like in my head how much I need to finish before the end. And then I can also decide priorities, like what to scrap. Maybe we don't need that fourth sponsored technology. Like when you're alone, you just don't have as many resources. So you gotta be building quick.
Yeah. Only got the 2 hands that God gave me and the brain. So
yeah, half a brain.
Yeah, half a brain. So now we'll transition to talking about. You already kind of gave a sneak peek about one of the projects that you shared with me, but I'm very much interested because this is the WalletOTP. Because one, it's really cool and it seems very useful, and even more useful that you actually have active users on it, which I think that might be not a first for the show, but I think that's I think there's another app that was also being actively used, but I think it's somewhat an unfortunate hackathon tradition to build something, finish it, and then never touch it again. So I'm very much interested.
Yeah.
If you give us you gave us an intro of what it does, but like, why do you think that was a really good problem? And then also how you sort of maintaining it, if you are maintaining it now, or how did you get actually users after the fact?
Yeah, so WalletOTP solves a very specific problem. It replaces Google Authenticator, Authy, any of those authentication vaults that give you a 2-factor password. So I needed this solution for myself because I'm always losing my phone, it's dying, something's going wrong where I don't have my Authy app accessible, because Authy is limited to just one device. So if my phone ever died or got lost, I wouldn't be able to log into all my accounts, even if I know the passwords. So I created this so that all of those passwords are tied to my wallet instead. So anywhere I have wallet access, whether that's like my computer, my laptop, my phone, my iPad, I'm able to get my 2-factor authentication like passwords. So I'm always able to log in across the web. So I actually think it was a very cool like solution, and I still use it. And every once in a while, I'll run into someone kind of like on the Web3 circuit, and they're like, oh yeah, I use WalletOTP for my Authy app too. And I'm always shocked. I've not done any support on it. Like, there's been no upgrades. I think maybe I changed a color, and that was about it on that project. But it just works and is out there for anyone to use. It's completely free and open source. And all of your passwords are private. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I mean, speaking of some of the presentation that I'm looking at, and I'll put it on the screen as well later on, like your presentation and both the like supporting images, which is like really cool because you added not only just like screenshots, what I feel like I normally just do, just throw some screenshots up there and call it a day. I guess what's sort of the thought, or like how did you sort of plan out what you would actually show here in terms of like the presentation and even like building out the video itself.
Yeah, so for the screenshots or like the images, I just had more time than I normally do. I usually try to have one good image that's somewhat designed. I just use Canva and elements in there and add text to it,
Yeah.
so it's really not that high fidelity at all. But I always try to have something like that that's kind of attention grabbing for sponsors. I previously was at Polygon Labs, and we used to see 200 projects come through when we were judging hackathons. And so I was always kind of attracted to the ones that had cool imagery, and that would draw me in. And then I would give their tech an extra look, even though I probably should have been just as focused on everything. That extra kind of like pull or hook would make me take notice of a project. So now in all my projects, I do that too, where I have at least one kind of feature image that's more than just a screenshot, even if I use screenshots for the other images.
Nice. That's great tips. I think, yeah, more than just screenshots is like the best takeaway for me personally as well. Cool. Well, we always end these interviews with a bit of, not I don't want a philosophy, but like maybe a general quote or thought that you would give someone just as advice for hackathons, whether it's their first hackathon, third hackathon, fifth hackathon. But like, what's a good motto or something that you hold in when you start a hackathon, the next one, to like or a mantra to keep you going?
Actually, I think I'm gonna cite you on this.
Oh my God!
You said something
hold on.
about developer points.
Go ahead.
You gotta capture this.
Yeah, go ahead.
A wise man once told
Yeah.
me that even if you don't win a hackathon, you earn some developer points. And I totally stand by that. It's basically just the idea that like you don't need to win a prize, you're learning something. And I walk away from every project that I build, whether it's for a hackathon or not, having learned something that I take into my next project. Like all of my hackathon projects probably have things that I didn't know before, and also things that I take from past experiences building projects. So like the more of these you do, the more successful you'll be, because you just have all of the different tips in your head from other times that you've done it. So earn those developer points, rack them up.
Developer points, people.
They don't convert to anything except knowledge.
I mean, I might open up a developer points store one day. So that'll be my next hackathon project. You just like to like prove on chain that you've submitted stuff, and then you just get these developer points, and then you never know.
I love it.
Could be a thing. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. When we always end with what's the next hackathon for you, if you have one already planned?
Yeah, I'll be at ETHCC, but I'll be there as a sponsor. So I'm hoping everyone builds on Nillion.
Shout out to Nillion.
Really cool blind applications. Shout out to Nillion. We have, I think, like 5,000 or 10,000 USDC in prizes. And we also have a bunch of builder bounties. So one thing I think everyone should be doing more of is building, even if it's not for a hackathon. And so if you look at bounties on like Farcaster, you can earn for building, even if it's not the 500,000 that you could win at one of these bigger hackathons.
I think that's a great way to end it. That's a great shout out, because there's so many bounties and stuff going on. I mean, like, and plus that you don't have the added stress of a hackathon, so you can really build.
And honestly, less competition as well.
Yeah, it's probably just.
So better chance to win.
In some of the cases, fortunately, I guess, it's almost a matter of just applying and having a good case, and maybe showing some proof that you're committed to building it and have some experience, or and you know what, you know the way that you can show that you have experience. Developer points.
I want to know.
Developer points.
Oh, developer points.
At the Dapper Dan Developer Points store. Coming soon. TM. Well, Steph, I wish you good luck at ETC as a judge or a sponsor. I will be there. Maybe I'll build a new one. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, it's been good. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Dapper Dan.